The United States of America is a vast country, filled with many different landscapes and cultures. Because of this variance across different regions, it can be helpful to break down some locations and learn more about what really makes them different. The East Coast and the West Coast are extremely different places when it comes to lifestyles, and each cater to different types of people. Many East Coast cities, especially New York, are known for their fast-paced approaches to life. People are often hurrying from place to place, walking quickly to catch the subway or the bus, trying to accomplish everything on their to-do lists. While this lifestyle can sometimes be challenging to adjust to, it is exhilarating to be surrounded by the hustle and bustle of so many people going places and doing things. East Coast are known for having a variety of bustling cities, impressive coastlines, and of course, delicious food. Welcome to today's episode of Foodology. You're listening to TALRadio powered by Touch a Life Foundation. I'm radio host Devansh, and I talk about the enormous world of a little word called food. The cuisine of New York City is a huge cuisine in itself. It comprises of many cuisines belonging to various ethnic groups that have entered the United States through time. Almost all ethnic cuisines are well represented in New York, both within and outside the various ethnic neighborhoods. Much of the cuisine usually associated with New York stems in part from its large community of Ashkenazi Jews and their descendants. The delicatessen concept, based on cold meats, bagels, and pickled goods, established itself as a pillar for New York City cuisine. The Dutch were the first Europeans to settle around the harbor around the year 1600. The explorers found that New York City's harbor was home for millions of oysters. Native people's joy for shellfish permeated into the settlers' colony soon. Wrapped and thrown into fire, oysters are unquestionably the first street snack of the Newfoundland. New York City became a part of the British rule in 1674. The American Revolutionary War changed the scenario altogether. So did a couple of massive fires that turned the city into ashes. All this made the city reinvent itself, but street food always comes back. As long as people live in New York City, there will be something to eat on the roadways. Fast forward to 19th century. The German immigration that gave the next push in the city's street food history. No one makes better sausages than the German, and their staple food eventually became New York City's own iconic hot dog. Germans sold sausages along with milk rolls and sauerkraut from carts through the city. The beginning of the 19th century saw significant changes in the American continent. As Latin America's Spanish colonies broke free in a wave of fierce, bloody independent movements, many found an opportunity to start a new story. Cuba first took hold on New York City. Its sumptuous cuisine permeates through the streets, now also merged with Chinese and Chino-Latino spectacle that holds a special place in New Yorkers' hearts. The food truck craze began in Los Angeles when Raul Martinez converted an ice cream truck into a taco truck and parked it outside a bar. This movement soon caught on and stormed the entire country. New York has released around 5,000 street food vending permits, and food trucks own 500 of them. There are no two food trucks alike, from Bangladesh chicken over rice to fish tacos. Everything goes. These are the modern pushcarts, and with the help of social media, street foods is back on the forefront of good eating. If you ask a New Yorker or an elderly resident living in New York about their memories of food from the city during the early to mid 20th century, their answer would be humble meals like baked beans and the fruit sold by old-timey wagons. Grocery shopping was a multi-stop affair. fruits from traveling produce carts, dairy from the milkman, and a giant block of ice from the iceman to keep the perishable items cold. People used to opt for cheap eats from the automat, which was an early fast food dining experience. Customers would use coins to retrieve meals from vending machines. The compartments were replenished by workers behind the machines. This does tell a lot about the culture of takeout food that developed popularity over the years in New York. Eating out is practically a sport in New York City, no matter your price or your preference. It is also home to some truly iconic foods, and some will tell you no city does it better than them. The best example is a scene from the iconic movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. The taxi door opens and comes out Audrey Hepburn in a beautiful black dress, looking like the very embodiment of grace and style. She carries the breakfast and coffee that she'd bought with her and eats in front of the Tiffany's store windows as she looks at the various pieces of jewelry on display with great interest. The entire scene is dreamy and generates a feeling of perfection. This scene's effect on pop culture, fashion, and of course the jewelry company Tiffany & Co. was massive and continues to be so. From the Manhattan to the Waldorf Salad, New York City restaurateurs often lead the way when it comes to signature dishes and cocktails. Let me tell you about some of the most iconic foods from New York City. Ever since Jewish immigrants from Eastern Europe brought bagels over to New York City in the late 19th century, this circular baked good with a hole in the middle started embodying New York. It practically talks to you in the display case of a New York accent. Shiny on the outside and soft and chewy on the inside, a real bagel is hand-rolled and boiled before baking. The city's tap water, which is so delicious that it's nicknamed the champagne of drinking water, is often attributed to what makes bagels here taste so special. Almost everyone loves pizza. Pizza has been crafted in unique ways around the world, allowing different locations to lay claim to specific styles. New York is known for their own style of pizza that has a thick outer crust and a thin crust underneath the toppings. It is also hand-tossed. These pizzas are cut into traditional triangle shapes and are designed to be folded in half when you eat them. Make sure to grab an authentic slice of New York-style pizza when you're there. During the mid-1800s, Chinese immigrants established in today's Manhattan Chinatown. Chinese restaurants are iconic, but its street carts offering both fried and steamed goods are legendary. General Tso's chicken is a sweet and spicy deep-fried chicken dish that is served in North American Chinese restaurants. The dish is named after General Tso Sung Tang, a Qing dynasty statesman and military leader, although there is no recorded connection to him, nor is the dish known in Hunan, that is Tso's home province. Chopsy is an American Chinese cuisine dish consisting of meat, often chicken, fish, shrimps or pork, and eggs cooked quickly with vegetables such as bean sprouts, cabbage, celery, and bound in a starch-thickened sauce. It is typically served with rice, but can become a Chinese-American form of chow mein with the addition of stir-fried noodles. The iconic Manhattan. The story behind this classical cocktail sounds as if it was concocted after drinking too many Manhattans, but maybe there's some truth in it. At an 1874 party celebrating the election of Samuel J. Tilden as governor of New York, held at the Manhattan Club, socialite Jenny Jerome requested a cocktail of rye whiskey and vermouth. She later gave life to another famously stiff drink, the Winston Churchill. The drink's origin story is disputed. However, people began requesting for the Manhattan cocktail after the club, and the name stuck. Next comes the Cronut. A modern-day craze, the Cronut was created by French pastry chef Dominique Ansel for his Dominique Ansel bakery. A customer remarked that the menu didn't feature any donuts. Ansel, only having experienced donuts in New York, was more familiar with croissant he had grown up eating in his native country. So, he began his recipe with what he knew, and the hybrid of two pastries became the Cronut. Black and white cookies. The black and white cookies, or half-moon cookies, is a round cake-like cookie, iced or frosted on one half with vanilla and on the other half with chocolate. It is a mainstay of New York's shops and streets. There are regional differences. A black and white cookie is flat, has royal icing on a denser cake base, and is common in New York City, while half-moon cookie is slightly dome-shaped, has frosting on a fluffier cake base, and is common in central New York and Boston. The origin of black and white cookie in New York is commonly traced to Glasser's Bake Shop, founded in 1902 by Bavarian immigrants in the Yorkville neighborhood of Manhattan. The Bloody Mary. A bartender, Fernand Pete Petiot, introduced his French vodka and tomato juice concoction to New York. But when he paid closer attention to local tastes, he began to adapt the original, adding Worcestershire sauce, lemon juice, cayenne pepper, and black pepper. And so the Bloody Mary we know today was born here in New York. Next is Eggs Benedict. Brunch is everyone's favorite meal, and we all know it wouldn't be the same without Eggs Benedict. It was invented in New York City, where brunch is an essential part of the weekend. Fittingly, this widely enjoyed hangover cure started with the hungry man suffering from a wicked hangover. In 1894, a Wall Street broker, Lemuel Benedict, was hung over at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. He ordered buttered toast, poached eggs, crisp bacon, and a hooker of hollandaise. He was so impressed that it was added to the menu, and hence it became Eggs Benedict. Baked Alaska. The name Baked Alaska was coined at Delmonico's in New York City. In 1876, Charles Ranhofer created a cake to honor the newly acquired state of Alaska. It was originally called an Alaska Florida, reflecting the extreme climate differences that are mirrored in the ice cream covered with flaming meringue. The name was then changed to Baked Alaska shortly after. Waffles and Chicken. Surprisingly, not an invention of the South. This oddly delicious combination hails from New York City's home to fried chicken, Harlem. Revolutionizing brunch everywhere, chicken and waffles originated at Wells Supper Club, a popular late-night eatery for jazz musicians. After gigs, it was too late for dinner but too early for breakfast, so chicken and waffles became the delicious compromise. English muffins. English muffins are obviously from England, right? Well, this is another food that was invented in New York by an English immigrant from Plymouth. He was a baker and created a slimmer version of English crumpets. They became a very popular item when he began selling them in hotels and shops in New York City. The Rubin Sandwich. Created at the Rubin's Deli by Arnold Rubin in 1914, this monster sandwich trumps all others. It was one late evening when a leading lady of Charlie Chaplin came into the deli and said, "Rubin, make me a sandwich. Make it a combination. I'm so hungry that I could eat a brick." The result was corned beef, Swiss cheese, sauerkraut, and Russian dressing, grilled between slices of rye bread. Who could ask for anything more? The actress loved it so much that she asked it to be named after her. Instead, Arnold Rubin chose it to name after himself. Next up are Napoleon Cookies. Affectionately referred to as rainbow cookies, these mini almond sponge cakes with raspberry jam are sold at Italian bakeries all over the country. Invented in the 1900s by Italian immigrants, they were created to pay homage to their home country, and the colors meant to represent the Italian flag. These desserts are heavy and dense, full of so much flavor in such a small bite. Next up is the iconic Waldorf Salad. Created at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, their namesake salad was invented by Oskar Skirke. This salad of apples, celery, and walnuts on a bed of lettuce, topped with mayonnaise dressing, is still one of the most popular items on the menu. This is something that Blair Waldorf would eat, with the dressing on the side, of course. It is a perfect light lunch or snack. Over the years, it has been modified several times to include various meats, fruits, and vegetables. I have saved the best story for last. The Tom Collins. Tom Collins is a cocktail made from gin, lemon juice, sugar, and carbonated water. This delicious and simple drink was born from a really lame practical joke. In 1874, New York City was filled with saloons. A guy decided to play a practical joke or a prank on one of his friends. He asked his friend that if he had seen Tom Collins, who was a made-up person, because Tom Collins had been in the bar talking trash about him. His friends then went looking for Tom Collins, again a made-up person, to give him a piece of his mind. This joke progressed, and people were constantly talking about this Tom Collins, who always seemed to be talking trash about people at the bar. It was so popular that it spread to Pennsylvania and then St. Louis. It was even dubbed the Great Tom Collins Hoax of 1874. Newspapers printed false articles about sightings of the infamous Tom. This eventually led one bartender in New York City to invent the cocktail. When people walked into a bar looking for Tom Collins, they unknowingly ordered a gin drink. Interesting, right? New York City is vibrant, from Michelin-starred gastro temples to the humblest street food stalls. There is something to please every palate, and there's a history behind every hot dog, every pizza slice, and every taco. The next time you're in the Big Apple, pay your respects to the hardworking men and women that keep the bountiful streets alive and well. Thank you so much for sticking around on this episode of Foodology. I had an incredible time talking to you.